Hello, it's Bolt Gun Metal again, and today I want to talk about making your own games. I don't know if this is totally common, but I have a huge interest in learning a game system, learning its pieces and its meta, and then kind of applying it to my own ideas. The first one I'm going to talk about is really out there, just to give you an idea of how far-fetched this can get. I created something called the Level 9 system in a game called Action Hero. Action Hero was a game where you could use 3 3/4 or 1/18 scale action figures with stands and play a miniature style game with them with D10s. It was actually surprisingly a great game. Probably the closest I came to getting something like Spider-Man, right? Like where if you played as Spider-Man, he was really agile and you could pose him as such and it affected the game. I made hundreds of accessories and tools and rules for the characters that they could do so you could build your own characters. And I'm not going to go any more deep into it other than that it was a small skirmish action figure game. That was kind of the first one I made, and it functioned really well, and I spent a lot of time with balancing to the point where it was basically where 9 level 1 characters would be the equivalent to 1 level 9 character. And that's how the list building worked, is a level 9 character was obscenely powerful, but only had 3 wounds. It was just really hard to hurt them. So you could have a whole, team of soldiers fighting the Queen Alien, was what I was doing for a while, was Alien vs. Predator battles as well. And it worked, it really did. So recently, I tried to get my girlfriend into Warhammer 40k. I've made a lot of videos about that subject. And midway through teaching her, she made a comment, and she wasn't trying to be bad or anything like that, but I read through it and understood what she meant. She asked while I was playing Warhammer 40k, well, is there anything other than war? Do they do anything other than war? And I was like, well, sometimes they go after objectives while they war, but no, they just kill each other. I cannot make my models have a glass of grog together. I've made this point. That does not interest her. She has an interest in the Warhammer 40k universe, the lore, the characters, the designs, making her own character in that. Has no interest in building a giant army and playing war games. I can see that now. It would be a waste of money to have her get into that, even if she's willing. So, I mentioned in another video that I recently created a game called Gauntlet. Gauntlet is a 4-person or more player cooperative game where you go through dungeons, random generating dungeons, and fight waves of monsters and solve puzzles. So that's a game that I made this weekend, and it worked really well. We played 2 games of it. The first game was, find the keys to get out and defeat the plague marines and zombies. It was really simple, but my crew had some fun. The next iteration, I added some D&D elements, including NPCs, interactable environments, and in-depth puzzle systems with different items and stuff like that you would have to do. That played out even better. Like, the players liked that even more. But my son made the comment he was really more interested in just shooting bad guys with guns and less interested in the NPCs and puzzle stuff that I was doing for my girlfriend. So this led me to the decision, she needs her own game, and he needs his own game, and we'll play his as a family. We'll play the Gauntlet Dungeon Crawler I just explained as a family when he's here, because I'm divorced. And then when it's just me and her, we will play a Dungeons and Dragons style game. Pardon, I'm getting over something. I'm still a little sick. So, I decided that we needed a D&D style game for me and her because me and her loved the NPCs, the puzzles, the interactions, the idea of leveling up, and she was totally into the idea of doing dialogue with the characters. And my son didn't really get it. For someone who has such a big imagination, he did not really understand that you're supposed to play as a character and stay in character and stuff like that. But she did, and so I was like, you know what? We need a Dungeons and Dragons game for 2 players where the 2 of us will act as GMs for the other in situations where there are DMs when it matters. So basically, if I'm having an interaction with a character, she can do the voices for that character and its motivations and stuff. And if she's interacting with an NPC, I will do that. So we're basically both going to share the role of Dungeon Master, and we're going to share the game as two characters. I'll be playing as Ignatius, a proud Plague Marine commander, and she's going to be playing as the avatar of Femora, which in the lore that I've written is Femora is the planet where all my battles happen, and the goddess that runs it is also named that. And every once in a while, she's able to put an avatar of herself into the world. So the game that we're going to be playing is the romantic journey between Ignatius, this knight, this Plague Marine knight who's a zombie underneath his armor and is quite disgusting, and this beautiful angelic-like woman who, when she becomes a real person on the tabletop, like in the real world for their games, she actually forgets that she's connected to the planet and that she's the goddess of this place. So she basically has no memory of it. But my character, his story is that he was cursed thousands, maybe even a million years ago, and basically he got cursed to live and die in battle thousands of times until he proves himself worthy to sit next to her on the throne as like a god. And he's never done whatever it is. He thinks it's heroic sacrifice, he thinks it's killing a bunch of stuff, he thinks it's getting an artifact. He's not really sure what he has to do to become worthy. He's like Hercules trying to get back to Olympia kind of thing. And it's like, so her story is that she comes down to Earth to help him complete this journey so he can one day sit in the kingdom of heaven as God and goddess. And that's his journey. That's what he's supposed to go do, and she's here to do that. And so they're going to go on a romantic journey where they are seeking the artifacts of both of their past lives, the past times that she had come down as an avatar and the past times he had lived and died, so they can figure out more about themselves and figure out more about what he has to do to become worthy and become a god like her. And so that's the story we have. This is what's so fucking funny. I'll show you guys. We'll go right to it. So this is the dungeons that I've been using for all of these little games. This is the setup for me and her's first Dungeons and Dragons style game. And I'll just show you, it's got all these little pieces of furniture and stuff. Our characters are actually going to start off in these cages, and we're going to have to work together to break out of this dungeon. Now, because me and her are playing a romantic, fun, goofy game, it's also going to have an aspect of Sims to it, like the computer game. We already have the plan that when we escape this dungeon and take it over, we're actually going to treat this like our vacation home, like a house that we love. And so, like, even though it's a spiked evil chair for torture, because it's a Plague Marine, captain, he's just going to sit in there and contemplate his existence. To them, this place is really like a home, like a perfect home for them. So that's kind of how we'll start the story, is because they're both kind of bad guy characters. Femora is a very dark, evil planet, and so she's kind of a goddess of evil, and he's on his way to becoming like a representative of death itself on this planet. So that's what it's going to be. So how the game will work that's different is this is going to be less about the miniatures. There'll be moments where we're, of course, miniatures and represented like that, but it's more about, like, I would give you, this would be a taste of the gameplay. Like, I'm going to go ahead and show you. Like, it starts off like this. So I'd be like, Femora, I'm stuck in a iron cage, but I think one of the panels is rusted. I think if I hit it hard enough, it might break free. I think I can get out. How about you? And then she'd be like, I'm going to try my magic and see if I can melt the bars. Let's go ahead and do that. And it's like, okay, Ignatius is gonna go ahead and see if he can break the bars with brute strength. Dice goes off the table, but you understand what I mean. You would roll the dice, and then on a certain number, he would be able to break free, and then based on certain stats, he'd be able to hide, survive, attack, and stuff like that. My plan is to use a D10 to do the reactions, NPCs, all that kind of stuff, and then the actual gameplay will still, when they're like in battle with other models, when they're just doing basic 40k stuff, I'm going to use the 40k 9th edition rules for AI models, villains, monsters, and then for the actual combat. What I will use the D10 die. What I'll use this for are like reactions. So what I mean is, like, this model walks, here I'll even show you. He walks into this little room, and I tell you that this big thing actually slides across the floor and it's going to try to hack you up. What do you do? And he said, I'm going to try to roll out of the way. So that's a survival roll on a 5+. Okay, you got a 5. So you roll and you just barely miss it right before it swings, and then it resets and goes back. And you see that it's on a tracked pattern, and it's going to do that every time you get close. But for now, you're safe. Then over here we would have like, okay, she escapes and makes her way into this room, but the dungeon keeper is right here, and so she's got to hide. Why don't you try hiding in the Iron Maiden? And we said because it was spiky and loud and ridiculous, it wasn't easy to hide in the Iron Maiden, so you need like a 7+. She gets a 4, so it cracks open and makes a really loud noise, and now the jailer is shaking his keys, trying to get the door open, and you have to make another decision. Do you want to try to hide in the Iron Maiden again or look for something else? And she's like, I'm going to try the Iron Maiden again. Oh, she gets a 1. She gets poked by it, and she screams with pain. Ow! It hurts! And now the door swings open, and you are face to face with the jailer. What happens next? So that was a taste of the Dungeons and Dragons-like experience that me and my girlfriend are working on developing together. You may have noticed that the game was a lot less like Warhammer and looked just like D&D. Well, the reason is right now the story that we have is that we're in an ancient realm, so it's supposed to be more D&D flavored. And this game will be leaning more towards dark fantasy than pure 40K. The other game that I'm making, that I've already finished, Gauntlet, could be played in the exact same environment. It's just the way you would play it is different. You would have fixed models that move a fixed amount of distance, that do nothing but move, shoot, and do like single actions to open doors and stuff. Like that's all that is. It's just the kill team rules, just a little bit extended to give it some story and fluff and flavor. What we just saw as what was set up is my current project. So to make it clear, I play 3 games. I play 9th edition Warhammer 40K. I play Warhammer Gauntlet, which is a cooperative split screen style miniature game that I made for my whole family to be able to enjoy. And the final one would be Grim Dark Dungeons, and that's going to be my Warhammer 40K Dungeons and Dragons experience for me and my girlfriend. What I'm trying to kind of sell on this is, once you buy the miniatures and your imagination starts going, you got terrain, stuff like that I currently have, it really did get my imagination going to the point where I was like, I could just make little mini games for the things that I want now. Like, she kept saying the lore that you're writing is really interesting, but all I see is, big armies and rolling dice. And I was like, well, that's how I tell my story is, once these guys won, what happened? What was the reason that they fought so hard to win? What happens to the armies that lost? That's how I write my stories, but I have so many interpersonal relationships that just aren't really expressed through massive battles of Warhammer 40K. So now I'm going to show you just a quick fun thing. I'm going to show you what Warhammer 40K looks like in comparison to the games I just described and showed you downstairs. Get ready, it does not look the same. This is a massive 12,000 point Warhammer 40K battle that I have going on right now. So, as you can see, this is nothing like the little Dungeons and Dragons experience I was just explaining with the D10 system and the whole, you can hide and stuff. Like, that's not this. This is just a giant war game and nothing more. So, it's not, mine is always in a campaign mode where it tells a story and stuff like that. But in the end, it's just mechanics and chess-like, gameplay. And why I find it necessary to have the other games is, one is about cooperation with my son and with my girlfriend so we can become a stronger family. And the other is about romance and playing in my relationship with my girlfriend. That way we have a stronger, tighter friendship. And, that's what I'm trying to build through these things. The wargaming is kind of a big thing for my group of guy friends. It helps me be social with them. But it sounds like these games are going to be my way of interacting with my hobbies and my family at the same time. They all like painting, but now they all have games that they can play with me. And she adores that D&D stuff and would never want to learn all the rules of a real D&D game. So I'm like, you know what? I'll just make a really, really soft version. I'll use that same level 9 system that I had developed from another game and come up with a couple ways to level up characters and should be fine. So this is Warhammer 40k. And imagine, like, this is Ignatius. This is the guy who was in the cage. This Plague Knight. This is why I love this. He is a character in all 3 games. He's a character in the Warhammer 40k 9th edition battles, clearly. He's in one right now. He's also my main character in Grimdark Dungeons. So this is who I play as alongside her character, Femora. And then he is an NPC character in my son's game, or a villain in the game called Warhammer Gauntlet. And, he's just an NPC, or he can even be like an NPC that joins you in battle and stuff like that. I like this character so much that I actually ended up developing a couple of games where he could interact with all 3, and I thought that was incredibly cool to have a character that, is adventuring and building his dream home with a beautiful angel, outside of battle, and then he's also a villain to the main good guys in one game, and then he's also my main character, and here he's a commander on a battlefield. It's just really cool to get that much use out of one model. That's another thing. The more games you make and create that use the systems, dice, all the things you've already purchased, terrain, it starts to feel like you're getting a really good deal on this stuff, despite the fact it's so fucking expensive. I feel like I can use those zombies for 3 different or more games right now, and that makes it amazing. The tank, really no, I only use it for 40k 9th edition battles. So it doesn't really have as much value as like a character like Ignatius, who I can use in all 3 games, or zombies or regular models. So it's really, creating these games to me is filling in any holes that you may have that 40k battles don't cover. So this is what I mean. Warhammer 40k battles are basically the moments in Lord of the Rings, such as the Battle for Minas Tirith, the Battle of Helm's Deep, which is all kind of based off of, well, like my current battle is based off of those things, or Battle of Pelennor Fields, Battle of Osgiliath, the combat inside of the Mines of Moria. All of the combat sequences that are large scale with siege vehicles and thousands of troops. I'm just going to say it. D&D can't do it right. Yeah, I said it. D&D can't do this. This is what Warhammer 40k does. This is its bread and butter. It can create the battles from your imagination or from a book or from a movie, and it can put it on the tabletop for you to interact with it in a massive tactical combat experience. This is something Warhammer just totally dominates D&D with. The only problem is there any interpersonal relationships developing? What's Legolas up to? What's Aragorn up to? We don't really know. They're there and they're fighting and stuff. Like, I have named characters here, but they're not doing dialogue or, anything. They're just fighting. So I think what I use Warhammer 40k for is when my story reaches a point where there's going to be a battle, like in my D&D games or my games of Gauntlet with my son, this is what the battles will look like. I will come play 9th edition battles to represent, moments in the story. Like when they get to a point where they have to fight off and hold a castle, you bet your ass it's going to look like this. And there's going to be a huge battle going on, and I'll probably have all of my games be able to play at the same time at some point. What do you mean? I could literally play a massive battle, stop playing the massive battle, control a small group of characters and have them go on an adventure within the giant battle, and just use the giant battle as a dungeon for dungeon crawling, or use the giant battle for a crack team of small Ultramarines to move around the battle fighting cool enemies. I could use the same battle diorama for all 3 games, and I could literally do it at the same time. Like, it'd be very hard and be very stressful, but yeah, you could easily do that. My idea has always been, if you were playing Star Wars, wouldn't it be cool if you had an infantry game, a lightsaber game, a starship game, and a massive starship like the Imperial cruisers kind of thing. So you end up having every type of the battle going on at the same time, so that it has that four-dimensional feel that Star Wars had. There was aircraft in the sky, there were giant Death Stars and Admiral class ships, and then there was also troops on the ground plus Luke in a lightsaber duel. There was 4 different types of combat going on at once, and no single miniature game can cover all that. So my idea was always like, why don't you just play every type of Star Wars game, then have their campaigns going at the same time, and be like, okay, on this table, Luke is dueling Darth Vader. On this table, they're doing the Battle of Endor against the Ewoks. On this table, we're doing Star Wars X-Wing doing a trench run. And on this table, we're playing Star Wars Armada. And they all affect the same battle. That's what my dream thing has always been, and so I've created that where all 3 types of games are affecting the same story. And so I think that's really cool. And when I worked at a game store, that was my big sell, because I got put in charge of the Star Wars stuff, of all the Star Wars releases and stuff like that. And I was like, how would you guys feel if I ran all the campaigns at once for all the Star Wars stuff, so we can get all our Star Wars people here, which wasn't that many. And I was like, that way we can have X-Wing going over here, Armada over here, Legion over here, and if there was any others, get that one over here, and then we'll create an interlocking campaign that affects all of those games. And I was like, that's so dope. Like, I really did like that concept, and so I've done it here. Creating your own games is just to me, it's to fill in whatever the current market hasn't done already for you. And I'm sure there's games that would do what I want better. I'm sure D&D would be better, and games like Zombicide do what I do better. But I don't care. Making your own games and having home rules is just an incredibly fun experience. It's kind of godlike. If you've ever loved video games, I mean, I literally got to create this world, decide where the armies are going to spawn, what the rules of engagement were going to be if I wanted to change them. Sometimes I make it so there's no charging on the first turns if there's this many models, things like that. I have pure control until the dice are rolled. That's the way this goes with all 3 games. And it just really gives you a sense of control and a sense of storytelling. And now I have a Dungeons and Dragons game, a Zombicide style game, and a Warhammer 40k 9th edition battle system, all working together to tell grim dark lore. And I just adore that. So this is an awesome part of the gaming. I think you don't usually start with making your own games. I do think that was something I didn't even think about until I was already well into the hobby. But it doesn't need to be that way. Once you have an idea of the meta, this is what I mean. The meta of miniature games is that they move, they shoot, and they charge. That's it. That's the standard meta, and you roll dice to represent that in some way. It's as simple as that. So once you know that's all they are, you have to come up with a movement system, a shooting system, a close combat system, and really that's it. You're kind of done. And it's a super, super easy thing to do for people who are interested in video game design. I implore you to give this a shot too, because it does feel roughly the same, just with physical assets instead of digital. So yeah, this is not what I showed you with that Dungeons and Dragons game. It doesn't look anything like it, but it can be used the same way. Me and my girlfriend's characters could go adventuring. She could be right here, and we could go all the way across this table in a massive D&D dungeon where we're avoiding combat, and maybe we're using cloaks so that we're invisible or something like that, and we're moving around the battlefield trying to stay alive. Maybe we're in the back of this Land Raider and it's taking us to where we need to go. It's the idea that you could interact your Dungeons and Dragons games with your Warhammer 40k games, with your Zombicide games, is really doing it for me. So that's what I'm going to do, and I really enjoy the idea. Let's go back to the other shot, where you're stuck looking at me. After looking at those 2 tables, I can't help but feel bad for you that you have to go back to looking at me. Because, frankly, those tables get me so excited about the range of terrain and how much it changes the game. That dungeon terrain we were looking at earlier does not look like what I just showed you at all. And I didn't really understand that until now, that D&D is all about the insides of a building, like a dollhouse. Like if you cracked open a dollhouse, the little furniture and the couch and stuff. And I actually adore that, it turns out. Warhammer 40k is about large structures. It's usually not as much about what you can do inside of them, but more about what kind of cover they provide. Here's what's kind of cool. I have terrain that functions perfectly well for both games. I've been using that dungeon tile stuff to implement into my 40k map, and it works perfectly. I've also been really tempted to use my tan desert buildings that you may have seen. I plan on using those for the dungeon game downstairs because they have opening buildings and stuff that work really well with D&Ding. But I'm really excited about creating my own games. They're not great, they're flawed as fuck, but they're fun. And I think it's just something, I think it's another awesome aspect of the hobby that I barely even knew existed until this year, and I just started getting more and more ideas once I started rolling dice and testing systems. And I'll tell you what, there's nothing more satisfying than coming up with the one I made. I made a Scooby-Doo dungeon where you had to run away, going door to door, literally, like when they run back and forth, trying to escape this monster and find a way out of the dungeon. And everybody loved it. It was goofy. It was fun. They had to find a cannonball and find the torch so they could light an old cannon that would blow a wall down, and then they could escape. And it was just really fun. It was a cool puzzle. Everybody came away from it high-fiving and feeling really good about the game. And it was like, oh my God, like I worked on this all day to get this like dialed into the 10th degree, and they adored it. And I was like, yes, like they were like, my girlfriend was like, can we do this next time? How can we make it more like this? What can we add this way? And he's like, I want it more this way. And that's how I ended up deciding to split it into two different games, is they both wanted different things. And I didn't want them to, either of them to not get the experience I have. I want everybody to have a game that's for them, and then I'll play with them with any of those games. 9th edition 40k, that's my baby. I love that. That's what I do. And then, you know, this Dungeons and Dragons game, that's my girlfriend's game. She's going to have to be the one to show interest and want to spearhead that and come up with lore. I want her to really make that hers. And then the Gauntlet, running around just smashing up zombies and anything that's in your way mode, I want my son to have a lot more say in that because that's his kind of game. So basically, Warhammer 40k has brought my family together on a level that I never would have expected. And it didn't take them buying massive armies for 9th edition battles. They didn't have to do that. They were fine with just using some of the stuff I have, and we were just good to go to start playing some small games. And now they're into the grimdark of it. Like my own girlfriend was saying, I was explaining the grimdark, and she was like, "Oh no, I picked up when you were doing the NPC characters." I picked up that the mentality is similar to Dark Souls. Like your NPCs are in the same mindset as Dark Souls NPCs, and I was like, oh my God, you just made this so much easier that you understand that's the mindset. Is, you know, there's a lot of hopelessness, despair, and pessimism in the Warhammer 40k universe, and in my idea is a lot of the time the little mini mission is kind of to improve the soldiers' morale in some way, do something that makes them feel safe. We killed the monster as we escaped, and the people escaped and were really happy with us. And it's like, people like that. I've been getting into building my own games this whole year. I've been messing around with it. And whenever I said at one point that I wasn't into miniatures for a month this year, and it was because I was building that action figure miniature game. So I guess I was still into the same thing. I was just testing 1/18th scale miniatures to see if they had anything, if they could do anything worth transitioning to them instead of using 28 millimeter. Tell you this, you could add posability. And that was how my action hero system worked, is if they were crouching, they'd get better shooting. If they were standing up, it'd be a little worse. And if they were prone, they could get protection and shoot better, but they couldn't really do anything if they were charged. It worked well. It was a cool system. It probably is going to go on to reinforce my Dungeons and Dragons system now. So, making your own games. Who's done it? Who shows an interest in it? Do you do it digitally? Do you do it physically? What's the difference? How close are they? Should I go look into digital gaming and building digital games if I'm so interested in building little worlds and telling stories and NPCs? Or is that just the good stuff of Dungeons and Dragons? I don't know. I've never really messed with Dungeons and Dragons. I'm actually kind of a noob. I did GM for the Star Wars version of it. I don't really think I knew what I was doing, so I don't think I really do now. So this is new territory for me. I'm a 20-year veteran of Warhammer 40k, but somebody who knows fucking nothing about D&D. So it's a total, when I realized that we didn't need the miniatures for the first mission, I didn't even know what to do. I was like, what do you mean we don't need miniatures and dice and combat and swords and guns? And I was like, oh my god, I made a game mode that doesn't need miniatures for its first thing. You could use a token to represent where you're at, but you certainly didn't need a miniature. It was kind of not necessary. I was like, oh shit, I'm really in territory I'm not used to now, because I don't play anything if it doesn't have little toys. And it's like, I guess I'm sold on the little dungeon that looks like a little toy, but it was like the idea that I'd be playing the game and I don't even have a physical representation. That's how D&D we're getting. And I was like, wow, like this is totally new ground for me. But yeah, we're creating our own D&D game. We already created our own zombie side game, and it was awesome. It's so much like Omega 10 Protocol. If you've ever played that, it's just a fantastic cooperative alien shooting up game, kind of Area 51-ish. But that's my talk on creating your own games. I will tell you, your friends will often not give a shit or want to play your games. I don't know why that's always a thing, but I've always seen that as a consistent thing. It's like whenever you create a game, you may not get the interest that you're hoping for. People are more interested in a fixed set of rules that are like universal. They're not going to be too excited to play you in a game that you created where maybe you could get, benefits that they wouldn't. I think there's a bit of a, who wants to play the game with the guy who created the game? I think that does happen. So be aware of that. You might create a game that's super kick-ass and then not have people who actually want to stop playing what they're already playing and play your game. I'm lucky because I have family members who don't know any better, so they think my games are good even if they fucking suck. So that's what I have to say. I really like talking about this subject. I want to get into the comments, so please ask questions or give me suggestions for creating a simple leveling up system, how to use some basics on D&D GMing, some stuff you figured out, anything. Imagine I'm somebody who knows nothing about Dungeons & Dragons but knows a fuckload about Warhammer 40k and is trying to smash them together and make his own product. I know they make a Warhammer Dungeons & Dragons. I know people are going to say that. I don't want that. I don't want a super intricate rule set. I want one that can be understood by my girlfriend, me, and maybe even my son one day. So it's got to be fairly simple. I figured less than 5 pages of writing with a pen. Not front and back, like literally 5 pages. It should be fine. And I'll write more as needed, like as needed. So it'll be a nice simple rule system, almost a 1-page rule for D&D that relies more on the fact that we're a close relationship, and so we can get a lot of things going just by the fact that we're goofy. And I immediately made it so whenever we're not talking in character, we'll say that our characters can hear each other's thoughts. So when me and her are just talking about stuff about the game, like, do you want to go that way? I'm thinking about looking this way and stuff. Out of character, it's like our thoughts are connecting in the game. So we created a little meta version. She's super into it. We're both into it. My son is super into it now, and I've got them all hook, line, and sinker on Warhammer 40k. I just had to create something that matched what they could consider fun. Again, it's a game, so I had to find games that they thought were fun, and controlling thousands of miniatures with tons and tons of stats and stratagems and stuff just doesn't sound fun to either of them yet, but they're getting there. And it's really great to see them take an interest in my hobbies. It shows, my importance in my own family. Most nights we're spending working on Dad's hobbies with him. We were playing my games, building terrain, checking out miniatures. It seems like my hobbies have kind of bled into other people's lives now, and it hasn't been a completely terrible thing. It's like instead they seem to be enjoying themselves. Like they seem to be really happy to be part of the hobby. My son asks for miniatures every time we go to the store. My girlfriend is so nervous about painting her first miniature. She doesn't seem to be able to get started because she's convinced that she's I don't have the right colors. Maybe I need an airbrush. I was like, just put some goddamn color on the miniature. Stop putting so much thought into it. Just color the damn thing. It's like, we're getting ready to start our game. We literally need your character finished soon, or, this dungeon's not going to last forever. But that's what's going on. I just kind of felt like talking about it. I thought it was really cool. You can make your own games. Who knew? You can just make your own games. I did that as a kid, but, now to make them with rules that are, like, good and solid and fair. And it's like, yeah, like, that. It's just fucking satisfying when you balance the game. I haven't gotten combat right yet. I'm still working on combat. Because right now, sometimes I gotta wig it and tell my, yeah, son, you made it. And I'm like, he totally died. Maybe I should make these guys a little less powerful when they're facing off against my son. Well, like when we play that game, it might be Warhammer easy mode, and then with my girlfriend, I know not to put huge hordes of enemies. She has no interest in that. So it's not going to be a game about huge battles and combat. So, you heard my couple examples. You heard about Action Hero. You heard about Warhammer Gauntlet, a cooperative experience. And then you heard about Grimdark Dungeons. And hopefully you can take some of these ideas and sprint with them and make mine hilariously outdated and hilarious from the minute they're conceived. Because I genuinely think I'm not very good at this. I'm just willing to do it. And I think a lot of people would be much better than me. They just need to be willing to try to crack it open. Crack open a game and start figuring out how the fuck would I do that? How can I make the movement better? Maybe I want a suppressing fire system, something that Warhammer 40k doesn't mess with. Those are the kind of things that you can take interest in. And it's really cool when you start coming up with your own rules. Like when I came up with the Action Hero system and found out how to make Predator feel like Predator, it felt great when I got him right. Like he had a claw, he had thermal vision, he had a heat-seeking plasma cannon on his shoulder that he could fire even if he was moving. It was or he couldn't fire if he had to hold still to shoot. And it was just really cool. He could cloak. It was awesome. He could do all the things, and I got the rules right, and it was fair. And it's like that's what you're going for. It's like when you get that right and you dial it in just right, you feel like a master of coding. Like you've just dialed it in just right and you won. So good luck if you're going out to make games. I'm really happy that I got to talk this long about it. I've been so excited. I can't believe my whole family has taken a sudden interest in Warhammer to this degree. And now I'm just taking it and running. Not to mention I still have 9th edition Warhammer to myself, which is exactly what I want, selfishly. The family can have their parts of Warhammer with me, and I can have the thing that's mine. So 9th edition is my thing to experience with me and some friends if I play 10th. But there it is. This was Bolt Gun Metal. Go make some games and tell me how they turn out, or post them and let us know how to play them or something. I'd love to play some of you guys' games. It sounds awesome. So